Greetings, everyone. I am Aubrey Sells, and I serve as Miss NACWC on behalf of the National Association of Color Women's Club Incorporated, Women of Empowerment, BWJQ's Federated Chapter. I want to welcome all you guys to this special event, Please Talk Politics. So we have a lot of special now, Aubrey Sells. And just really to motivate us to get to places that we want to be one day. And so without further ado, I'm going to hop right into it with our introductions. And so I'm going to bring up Ms. Allure to do her introduction.
Hello, everyone. I am Ariel Powell, and I currently serve as Ms. Allure. Erica S. Gilmore is the 7th Metropolitan Trustee of the Nashville and Davidson County Consolidated Government, having made history in August 2020 when she was elected the first African American and woman to serve as Metropolitan Trustee. As Metropolitan Trustee, Gilmore is committed to making this the most transparent and participatory administration in the history of the office. Trustee Gilmore has spent her entire career fighting for traditionally marginalized and middle-class communities. For over a decade, she has served as the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County at-large council member, Speaker Pro Tempore, Minority Caucus President, and District 19 City Council member, earning a reputation as a strong, pragmatic legislator who champions the hope and progress solutions to remedy Nashville's toughest challenges. She's a proud alumna of Tennessee State University, earning a Master of Arts in English. Gilmore studied at the John F. Kennedy School of Government and Harvard University. She obtained a BA degree in English from Howard University and completed coursework abroad at the American University of Beirut. Gilmore comes from a strong family tradition of public service. She is the daughter of Harry Gilmore and State Senator Brenda Gilmore, who serves in the Tennessee General Assembly. Gilmore, a third tradition Nashvilleian, is the proud parent of an adult daughter.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hello everyone, I'm Morgan Webb and I currently serve as a study lab assistant incorporated for this academic school year. Ms. Leah Dupree Lowe serves as the Government Affairs Officer for Tennessee State University. In her role, she assists the president and the university leadership with communication to the state and local government officials regarding policy and program issues facing this institution. Also, Ms. Love owns the Dupree Consulting Group, where she assists clients with business formation and successions and various other legal matters. Previously, Ms. Love served as Director of Legislative Services for the Tennessee Department of General Services and an adjunct business law professor at Tennessee State University. Ms. Love is a member of several organizations and boards, including Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Hendersonville Area Chapter of the Links Incorporated, Advisory Board Chair of YMCA Community Action Programs of Middle Tennessee, and Advisory Board Vice President Chair of Tennessee State University Academy. Ms. Love received her bachelor's degree at Tennessee State University, a master's in business administration from Valparaiso University, and a Juris Doctor from Indiana University Robert H. McKinney School of Law. Ms. Love is a member of Lee Chapel A&E Church, where her husband, State Representative Harold M. Love Jr. is the pastor.
And last but not least, Mr. D is a senior legal advisor at Free Hearts, a nonprofit organization led by women that have been formerly incarcerated. Prior to that, she served her community for the past 6.5 years as an assistant public defender. She devoted all of her determination, energy, and passion into fighting for clients in the courtroom and the community. In 2002, for her alleged involvement in drug distribution ring, the D was sentenced to 7 years in the federal prison for a crime she didn't commit. The United States Supreme Court remanded her case, and eventually she was re-sentenced to her mandatory minimum sentence of 5 years. The DA was finally released from federal prison on December 1st, 2006, after serving almost 4 years. 2 years after her release, Katia enrolled into law school at the Nashville School of Law, graduated in 2012, and became a practicing attorney in Nashville, Tennessee, in December of 2012. In addition to her work as a public defender, Katia served the community as a juvenile justice realignment task force. She received several awards and is very active in the community as a senior legal advisor with Free Hearts. She continues to educate and advocate on her behalf of the community, focusing on criminal justice reform, incarcerated women's rights, voter restoration, and various other issues. She recently ran for Congress for the 5th District in Tennessee. Welcome all of our guests. Thank you so much. So as you can see, we have some super powerful women on this panel, and this night was created for us not only to learn from them, really be poured into them, but for us to ask questions that we want to ask. So tonight we're going to be covering a lot of different information, including their career and political and professional avenues, personal experiences, and why we need to vote. At the end, there will be a Q&A session. So everybody who's watching online and watching through YouTube, please make sure that you're commenting in the YouTube box for questions. We don't want to ignore you guys either. We want to make sure that any questions you have for these lovely ladies while they're here on our campus, we can ask them. So without further ado, ladies, we're going to get right into the discussion. So as I said, the first is going to be about career and political professions. We just kind of want you guys to just tell us how you got into your positions, just fill us in on how you got to where you are right now. And just
Thank you so much, Ms. for having us here. And it is an honor to be with each one of these young ladies on the stage today. So how I initially got started, let me back up here. I was also an assistant dean here at Tennessee State University, so I just want to give a shout out to that. And I worked with some of the best students while I was here during this time. So yeah, give yourself a hand. I picked overlook that, some pretty awesome students. So I originally got started, I saw a need in the community. I think that's where it begins with. I saw a need, and I noticed a lot of students in TSU, like they say, when I was here, they said, Assistant Dean, how can I get involved? I want to do this or that. So it really begins with when you see a need. And so I lived off of Jefferson Street, and during that time, I saw a need in the community. The community was very, very fragile. So I thought to myself, what could I do to improve the community? I always share with someone maybe 20 years ago when I had moved there, and I had a grandmother, and my grandmother was from the country. And so when she came and she saw Jefferson Street and she saw where I had moved, I was really excited. She was not excited. She started crying. I said, Grandma, get a hold of yourself, would you please? I said, this place is beautiful. It has lots of potential, and it has all the things we need to make it a great place. So that's how I actually got started. I started working in the community. I have to take this off for a second. I can't breathe. I apologize. I started working in the community with the neighborhood association. That's where I really started originally. And we started with cleanups. We looked at crime. And from there, I began to work with the council member. And from there, I decided to run for office. And when I originally ran for office, I was a single parent. I still am a single parent, and I was a teacher. And people said to me, like, what do you know about politics? Why are you going to run for office? You don't have enough money, you don't have any experience, you don't have the time. And so from there, I just decided I was going to run, and I started talking to people. So that was kind of the beginning of my career. And some, I guess, 16, 17 years later, I'm still involved in it. So that was kind of the beginning, and I can circle back around and give you more detail on that. But I saw a need, and I just jumped in and did not let what others had to say affect me.
Good evening, and thank you again for having me here. I am Leah Love, and if you remember from my bio, I am the Government Affairs Officer here at Tennessee State University. And so the way that I got here is really a full circle moment. When I was a student here, a junior political science major, I did not know, what I was going to do with that degree besides I wanted to go to law school. And so the late Dr. Hoyt King, he introduced me to an internship program at the state legislature. And so at that time, Governor Bredesen was the governor, and I was able to intern at the
the state legislature and working on bills dealing with the Department of Human Services. And I love that experience, did that for 6 months. And then, a year later I graduated, moved away and doing sports law. That's what I wanted to do, was working at the NCAA because I just knew I wanted to be a sports agent and that was just what I was gonna do when I grew up. But something about that just did not fit well with me. I wanted to do something more and I decided that I wanted to come back to Nashville. And this is why networking and keeping in contact with everyone that you meet is so important. One of the things that I always do when I meet someone and they give me their business card is I write the date that I met them and where I met them. And then after that event, I'll email them to let them know, thank you for giving me your card. I look forward to seeing you and working with you in the future. And how I did that, so 10 years later, when I came back here, I emailed the director of that internship program at the legislature and told her that I was a new lawyer and I wanted to come back to Tennessee and work. And so that's how I ended up getting working at the state Senate, working for Governor Haslam, and then eventually circling back and getting back here at Tennessee State University. So I credit TSU for bringing me back home and giving me the expertise and the experience that I gained working in the legislature for over a decade. That's how I got there. So I encourage you all to get our business card to you here right on the back, how you met us and where, and to stay in contact.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Keita Haynes, and I am the Senior Legal Advisor at Free Hearts right now. And, I always like to tell people my path is a little unconventional. So how I got to this point is that I ended up going to federal prison. And so when I went to federal prison, just, even with everything with my experience with the criminal legal system and just how I saw how it really took advantage of me. But then when I got to prison, I really saw like all of the things that I had studied, because I graduated from here as well, Tennessee State University, with a degree in criminal justice and psychology, and had done a lot of work around the mandatory minimum sentencing laws and, recognized that Black and brown and low income communities were disproportionately impacted. And this was before anybody was even talking about it. This was back when there was the 100-to-1 crack cocaine ratio. And so when I get to prison, I like everything that I had done, majoring in criminal justice and had looked at, like it like became a reality to me. Like I was looking at mass incarceration in the face. And it was very jarring. And then to hear the stories that the women told about some of their attorneys and their public defenders, I already knew that I was going to go to law school and, I only wanted to do criminal defense work. But it was at that moment that I decided that I wanted to be a public defender and that I wanted to be able to give the same level of representation that I was blessed to have, because I had a private attorney, to people that couldn't afford to pay for it. So when I came home, I went to law school and did an internship at the public defender's office while I was in law school. And working at the public defender's office, that was the only job that I applied for, once I graduated law school and was waiting on my bar results. Because that was just, I knew that that was the path that I was supposed to be on. I knew that that was my purpose. And, and I did that for 6.5 years, and I loved every single minute of serving people in the community that are considered less than, and advocating for them and standing up for them. But it also, like with me just recently running for office, and even now at Free Hearts, today I've spent all day helping people pay fees and fines so that they could get their voting rights reinstated, so that they could vote in this upcoming election. And, that was one of the things that was part of my platform when I ran for Congress. But it was like what, Erica mentioned. I decided that I was going to run for Congress because I saw a need. After talking with my clients and various different members in the community, realized that there were so many things that were going on in people's lives by the time they got to me in the criminal justice system, and no one was really doing anything about it. And there were so many people that felt locked out and left behind in silence by this government that is supposed to be representative of us. And so that's why I decided that I was going to run for Congress, because like I said, I did see a need, and, the need is still there. And, and so I always tell people, even though I didn't win, the work continues.
And you had a great run. Okay, so you had a great run.
Thank you, ladies, so much for that. Wow, I myself have already got so much insight just from the opening, so I'm excited for the rest of the discussion. Now, well, before I go again, I just want to remind people that are online, go ahead and start dropping any questions you have in the chat. So when it's time for our Q&A portion, we can go ahead and have those ready to ask. The next in discussion, we just want you to talk about your personal experiences. Anything that you felt like was challenging, the hardest lesson you had to overcome, or even one of the best memories you have had in your various positions.
Thank you so much. I think for me, the biggest thing is you have to be strong. And when I say that, I really mean that. So if in anything you do, you have to be strong, but you really have to be mentally strong because you're going to hear a lot of no's, right? But just because someone tells you no, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't pursue it. And just because you lose one time doesn't mean that you don't try again. So you really have to be persistent. So I will give an example of where I felt horribly. I ran for mayor and I came in 4th place, but it was a horrible run. I mean, they just dragged me through the newspaper. I mean, so you can't have soft feelings. You just gotta tough it up. And if you really believe in something, you have to do it and stick with it. And I share that because sometimes I've seen young people run for something, they don't get it, they don't do it again, and say, I don't want to be bothered. It's too much of a hassle. But if you really want something and you're passionate about it, you just do it again. You don't worry about what people say. If you really believe that you have been called for your purpose and that you're in purpose, sometimes you lose and you're supposed to lose. And it's the lessons that you can learn from that. And I think that was really a great lesson for me because I served as a council member and I had won every race that I had ran up until then. I started off as a district council person, which I represented the 19th district, which was some 7,000 to 19,000 people. And then I ran as a council member at large and I represented some 700,000 people. And I thought I was ready to run for mayor. And a lot of times it takes money to do that. I want to give a shout out to a young lady who is running right now. I went to her fundraiser the other day. Her name is Marquita Bradshaw. She's running for U.S. Senator. What I did not realize though is she is the only Black female that is running for U.S. Senator in the United States right now. She's representing Tennessee. So that's powerful. Once again, you have to think, let's give her a hand. She's not here. But we want to give her a hand. Like, why don't we do these things? And a lot of times it's because of fear or we have been told no. So before I became the first African-American to win this seat, the first woman to win this seat, there's a process in council where you can be nominated. And so I had my peers and I worked with my peers, and usually, traditionally, if you ask your peers, they usually do a council appointment of another council member. So I asked all my council members, I asked the guy that I represented one time as a council member, and now he was my council representative. And he's like, no, I don't think so. So once again, when I went on the floor, I didn't have the votes, but I said, I'm still gonna stick with it. I think maybe like 4 people on the council recommended me for this position that I have now. But I said, it's okay, I'm still gonna stick with it. Once again, you wanna be nominated by your colleagues, but that didn't happen, but it didn't stop me. I said, it's okay, I'm still going to run. And I went on and I ran and I won by 88,000 votes. And I think the thing that's interesting about this seat, in our 60 years of consolidated government, it had been traditionally held by white males. So there's a need for African Americans to be involved in politics, but you have to be strong. And I share that story because you will receive no's, you will fall on your face. Some people you think will help you, they won't help you, but it doesn't make a difference. If you feel like you're in purpose, you go ahead and do it. Now, one of the specialties that I love about this office is that it's able to help people that are senior citizens. And I really love that because gentrification is a big issue in the city. And so we actually collect property taxes, but we have programs that are for senior citizens and for people that have low wages. So if you do that, we offer money that comes from the city and we help people to pay their taxes and stay in houses. And so I thought that was really important because a lot of times African Americans did not know about those communities. So that was one of the things that I ran on my platform. So what the feedback I would have to share is that you have to be strong and you don't listen, especially if you're going to be in politics. You can't listen to what others say. You do it because you want to do it. If you believe in something, you do it and you stand by those convictions. You don't do it because you think you may receive a favor later because that person may disappoint you. You don't be disappointed in that. So you do something because you really believe in it. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, it's okay because you're looking at yourself and that's what you really believed in doing anyway. So you didn't lose anything. So that's what I would have to share. I hope I answered the question. All right, thank you so much.
I'm gonna go and tell Lynn that a little bit. She said, be strong, and you do have to be strong. My experience is mostly, in politics. Some of it's partisan, some of it's not. And one of the things that I get a lot of pushback on, and I push right back on that, is people want to know how I've worked for and with the Republican Party, or how I'm married to a Democrat, or how do you do that? How do you do those things? And so, because I've worked with the Brandon administration, the House administration, and now I'm working at Tennessee State University. But one thing that I want to encourage you all to do, we're in the voting season, and there's so much advocacy going on. And when you feel that urge that you want to change something or do something, people say, "Oh, you should run for office," and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Running for office is amazing because we need people like Erica, in office. But there's also a need for people to be the lobbyists, for people to be the advocate. Elected officials don't know everything. They may be an expert, in criminal justice. They may be an expert in something else. But there's more to being an elected official than just criminal justice, than education, than healthcare. So you need people like myself or other people in different areas to help educate you. And so one of the things that I've always had to overcome is, one, being the only Black. So when I was with the House administration, I was the only Black for so long out of about 40 individuals who were advocating for the different areas of government. And another thing that I want to make sure that we all understand is just a good civics lesson. Again, we are in the voting season, and understanding who can do what. So much emphasis is put on the presidency, and that's so important. But the president, as you can see, sets the tone for the country. The governor sets the tone for the state. The mayor sets the tone for the city. When President Obama was president, we sang Kumbaya because he was full of hope and love. And now under President Trump, it's different, and we're literally burning our country down. And so while it's so important, we can touch on this later on when we talk about voting, but why it's so important to vote for the presidency, don't forget about, the trustees, the mayors, the judges, don't forget about all those things. And so, again, if you want to do something, if you want to change the world, the country, your city, your community, your school, whatever it is, you don't necessarily have to be that person that's making the decisions. You can be that person that's influencing the person or informing that person that's making those decisions. And that's something that's always been a difficult thing for me, because people are like, "Oh, you should do this, you should do that." And I am very much okay with doing what I'm doing now, because I can effectuate so much more change not being an elected official. Being the person with that expertise, informing, the Ericas and the Harold Loves or whoever there is out there. So I just encourage you, just don't be discouraged. Don't think that there's only one way to make change. Look at other avenues.
So for me, I would say that, I had to have courage. And courage to even think about going to law school with a felony on my record. But not just courage to do it, but the perseverance to stick with it. Because there were so many people that told me that I would never get my law license because I did have a felony on my record. Even the attorney that I interviewed with for my bar exam told me that he would recommend me, but he could not guarantee that they were going to let me sit for the bar. And so I was able to sit for the bar, but I did have to have what we call a show cause hearing, on the board. And so I was not able to be part of the ceremony with all of my other classmates when they were sworn in by the Supreme Court. But the board did give me my license, and I was able to have my own private ceremony with my family and friends. So that was actually a little better because it was more intimate. But then working at the public defender's office and working within the criminal legal system, you know, you have to be persistent because you see all of the injustice that is going on. And if anybody tells you that it doesn't take a toll on you, they are not telling you the truth. Every single day, seeing every single person that is coming out of the lockup in the back, that's looking like me, that's looking like you, that's looking like my brothers, my dad, my moms, my cousins, like that takes a toll on you, you know, like that's traumatic watching that day in and day out. And then constantly having to fight against the judges and the DAs and even other criminal defense attorneys and even within the own office of the public defender's office. Like that takes a toll on you. And there were many days when I wanted to give up, but it was in those moments that I had to refocus and I had to say that what I was doing was bigger than me and that I was actually walking in purpose. And so I had to take the focus off of myself and to really focus upon Christ because that was the reason why I was there, because I was in purpose. And so I really had to persist through that time. There were a lot of personal attacks, being someone, because, Erica had mentioned, and, even Leah, the law, area, it's dominated by males, and particularly white males. And then, so I had to be 3 times as good as everybody else. 1, because I was Black, 2, because I was a female, and 3, because I was formerly incarcerated. That's a hell of a burden that you're carrying every single day, on top of the burden that you're carrying, knowing that the system is designed to keep your clients, the people that look like you, in bondage and in poverty. So, I definitely had to persist through that and just keep at it every single day until, it was time for me to move on and to do what I felt like, was just the next, pretty much the next area in line as far as like my purpose, as far as running for office, because again, I saw a need and, like Erica said, bless her heart, running for office as many times as she's done, like Lord have mercy, I take my hat off to her. But, you definitely do have to ignore the noise because there will be people that will say things, like what she said, a lot of people said the same things about me, well, why are you running? Like you don't have any experience. Why are you running for Congress? Like you should be running for school board. You should be running for council, all of those various different things. But, I had to ignore that and I just had to, recognize that I am not doing this so that I can get some type of name recognition or any of that. I was doing this so that, I can meet the needs of my former clients and people in the community. And so, and that's what I did. And so, I think in anything that we do, it definitely, we've got to have courage, we've got to have perseverance, but we've got to have, we've got to be persistent and stick it out.
Thank you, ladies. Once again, just amazing. I'm soaking it all up. I feel like I'm over here, so it's cool. The next conversation is going to be everything dealing with voting. So we know it's a super important election year. I know this campus has been pounded about getting registered to vote, filling out the absentee ballots, but I just really want you all to just speak on why it's important. Speak to those people who say, well, my vote doesn't matter anyways. And just really give us a lot of context about how our vote really does matter and why we need to get out.
I think that's a great question, especially with the social unrest that we're having right now. And I think a lot of young people are really disillusioned. And I have heard them, very educated, college educated young people share that they're not going to vote. I think what Leah shared was very important. A lot of times with African Americans, we go vote, we vote the person in, and then we say, they didn't do nothing. They didn't help me. But that's not how it works. There's so many different issues that she shared. There's education, there's criminal justice, and depending on where you are and what kind of representative you are, if you're a legislative representative, means you're on the legislative side. So when I was a council member, I was the legislative side and the mayor was the executive side. But we receive thousands of emails each day. So you got different people pulling at you for different things. Some people may be senior citizens. They may want more money for the budget. Some people, young people, worried about education. I'm sharing this why? Because you have to have yourself organized around certain things that are important to you, and lobbyists are tied to that. And as she shared, there's really not a lot of African-American lobbyists. And that piece is really important. I think that's why we get frustrated sometimes. That elected official ain't about nothing. They ain't do nothing. But then you're receiving 1,000 emails a day. You got to think they represent 750,000 people, 1 million people, 30,000. How do you get your voice to them? How do you make your issue important? You have to organize around that. And a lot of times we don't organize. And I think that's the piece we miss. And that's why we become disenfranchised. And when you don't vote, you miss the opportunity. So it's an interaction. You look and see who has your values, who has your ideas, what you believe in. We have a lot of African-American judges here. That piece is very important. Why is it important? Well, when you go before them and you have a marijuana charge, it's the difference between you getting a citation or ended up locked up, right? That's important. Attorney generals, we saw that was very important in Kentucky, right? So you have to vote, and each one of those seats are so important. So you want to make sure, even if the person's not African American, but they represent the ideas and the values that you believe. So when things don't turn out the way that we do, you feel like the taxes are too high or you're not getting representation in your community, it's because you're not voting people in that represent your ideas and values. And once you vote them in, you have to circle back around and tie yourself to an advocacy organization, or you either have to get with a lobbyist. It is so important because as she shared, there's no way you can know it all. You can have a specialty area, but there's so many different constituents that you have to have somebody to kind of bring it back to you. And the people that make the most noise and wear the shirts and come down to wherever, those are the people that get the attention. So I think that piece is very important when you talk about voting, or even if we talk about the governor as it relates to Tennessee State University, right, or the legislature. It's important. Why? Because they deal with money that's allocated to different universities. So any way that you tie anything that you need is tied to politics. And so you really want to make sure that you're voting in people that represent your ideas and values, and that you're circling back around and making sure that they keep your platform at the top of their minds. Thank you.
I heard the hold your vote hostage, or I'm not going to vote because it doesn't matter. I cringe every time I hear that because it's so important. And just kudos to Kita for going out today registering people to vote. But after we register people to vote, make sure that you go to the polls and actually vote. Every year, it's so easy to help someone fill out that form, but making sure that they're educated, particularly students here. I know that a lot of people are probably on your campuses trying to get you to vote, but making sure you get your absentee, and knowing the state that you live in, how soon you have to request that, and just being educated about it. But there's so many reasons why it's so important to vote. How many people took geometry in high school? An elected official determined that whether you had to take that. How many people had a parking ticket? An elected official determined whether you got a parking ticket or not. How many people pay tuition here? An elected official determines how much money that is and if it can be raised or lowered. Everything that you do is tied to an elected official. When you're born, you get a birth certificate. Elected official kind of makes sure that happens. That's government. When you die, you get a death certificate. That's government. Like I used to always tell my students when I taught here, if you don't do government, government will do you no matter what. So from the moment you're born to the moment that you die, government is a part of your life, and there's an elected official that impacts that. So it's not just about Trump or Biden. It's not. It's so much more than that. We want to make, we love, especially here at TSU Black people, we love to hold someone accountable. We love to hear a good transformational story. We love to hear or want someone to change. Sometimes that person's not going to change. So sometimes you have to change who's in that position. And that's why it's important to vote. If it wasn't so important, then they would have just allowed everyone to vote. Women would have voted at the very beginning. Black people would have voted at the very beginning. They wouldn't have had these poll taxes. They wouldn't have had quizzes to determine whether you can vote or not. Before we were allowed to vote, or right after we were allowed to vote, they would hold a jar up with beans in it and say, if you can tell me how many beans are in that, then you can go vote. That's how important voting is, and that they know it's important. So I encourage you, please tell your friends that it is important. Everything that you do. The fact that you are sitting in here with a mask on your face, and elected officials thought that that was important too. Just everything that we do is tied to a decision that an elected official made. So if you don't like those decisions, then you need to vote for someone who thinks like you or someone that you trust enough to make the best decision, because you're not going to always agree with everything that somebody does. I'm sure Erica had people who didn't agree with her, but they still voted for her because they knew that she had a good heart and that she was going to make the best decision. So, I mean, that's just my little 2 cents. So if you hear somebody says that they don't want to vote, they're going to hold their vote hostage, or it doesn't matter, you tell them that Leah Love said, you better get out and vote often.
So today we paid fees, fines, and restitution for a man that has never voted in his entire life. And he has been wanting to vote, but could not vote because he did not have the money to pay his fees and fines and his restitution. So he had been locked out of our democracy because of an elected official that said that if you have been formerly incarcerated and have not paid your fees and fines and restitution or completed your probation and are current on your child support, then you cannot participate in our democracy. And to see him be so excited when we did our press conference today, and he could not stop smiling. He thanked everybody that was there. He's been trying to get his voting rights reinstated for 2 years now. That's how convoluted the process is. And so, you know, and I had to get my voting rights reinstated, but, you know, thank God I didn't have to go, you know, through the hurdles that he's had to go through. But, you know, for those that have never lost their right to vote, people take it for granted. And right now in the state of Tennessee, we have 421,000 people who can't vote because they're disenfranchised, because an elected official said that they couldn't vote. You know, and so, you know, the thing is that there are people that want to vote. There are people that want to be part of this democracy, but can't. And so we shouldn't take our vote for granted. But, you know, I also say this too, because working in the community, and most of the time I'm working with Black and brown and low income communities, I understand the struggles that people are facing. You know, I've heard before, well, why should I vote, you know, in this mayoral race? You know, like I'm, you know, trying to figure out how I'm going to feed my kids. My food stamps just got cut because, you know, I'm working 35 hours instead of 25. You know, that's real. You know, so these are real situations that people are in, but I think that, you know, you have to, there's an education piece that I think that we're missing as well too. And I think that we have to make sure that we're educating people on the importance of voting and who elected officials are, and, you know, like it's been set up here earlier, what they can do. In this particular election, I will say what Senator Booker said. Voting for like a win for Joe Biden doesn't get us to the mountaintop. It only gets us out of the valley. And we are deep, deep, deep in that valley right now, y'all. And I will be the first to admit that, you know, there are some policies and procedures that I, you know, would like for Joe Biden to go way more left on than where he is right now. But that's not going to keep me from voting for him. Like the alternative is just unimaginable at this point. And so, and then, you know, we also have to be mindful that we're not just voting for a president. Because if anybody is paying any attention to the news, I mean, like, gosh, there's been so much that's happened like in the past 2 weeks. But, you know, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, you know, I mean, we've got this whole battle as to whether they are going to nominate another Supreme Court justice before the election. And, you know, Amy Barrett Cohen's like, she is the complete opposite of Ruth Bader Ginsburg in her values and belief system. And so right now, we're all holding our breaths to see if Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned, if they're going to overturn, you know, the Affordable Care Act, to see if they're, you know what I'm saying, going to overturn, you know, gay marriages, like all of those things. And so it's not just, you know, the president that we're voting for. Elections have consequences. You know, Donald Trump has probably appointed the most federal judges than any other president. You know, and that's important as well too, because the federal judges, guess what? That's a lifetime appointment too, unless they decide that they're going to retire. So you have people in these positions that are, you know, making laws and, you know, that 9 times out of 10 are going to be detrimental to people that look like us. And, and so it's very important also, when it comes to just various different policies that, that are, pushed through. And even, when it comes to what's happening in Congress, what's happening in the Senate, it is a lot. And, the president is not the only person that's on the ballot. We have senators that are on the ballot. We have congressmen and women that are on the ballot. We have state elected officials that are on the ballot. And so it's really important. And particularly when you look at down ballot races, y'all, Tennessee, y'all, it's bad around here. And we have to change our state legislature, and we have the opportunity to do that as well too on November 3rd, because we have some awesome men and women that are running for a state rep, as well, that we can be voting for. So it's, it's more than just the president, it's so much more than that. But, we definitely need to make sure that we are making sure that our voices are being heard, because like I said, there's 421,000 people that can do it. And if you don't want to do it for yourself, at least do it for them.
I'm sorry. Just one other thing, Erica kind of touched on this a little bit, and I just thought about it, about just because someone doesn't vote the way that you wanted them to vote, or they don't make the decision that you want them to make, that doesn't mean that you hold your vote hostage the next year, or you vote them out the next year. Things take time. How many of you have ever, I'm not sure how old people are, but if you've ever seen or bought wine in the grocery store here in Tennessee, that took 7 years to get in the stores. 7. So they worked on that for 7 years to get wine just in the grocery store. So think about other issues that are just even more important than that. So sometimes things take time. And so I just want to for you all not to be discouraged when something doesn't happen immediately. They take time, and just stay encouraged and vote often.
Ladies, just such good insight. Now we're going to open up our Q&A portion. So in the audience, if you have a question, I say there's 2 mics on the side. So just basically walk out into the aisle and ask your questions. If you have questions online, please make sure that you comment in the chat. We have people who are monitoring those chats, so we'll get those questions asked for you. I have a couple questions. So while people are deciding my questions, I'll ask you guys. So at our age, how can we get involved with lobbying? Because I know that's actually a position. And how do we get involved in advocating for issues for these politicians? I know emailing, calling them, but can we get involved with lobbying at our age? We're just college students, and we don't have a degree or anything. So that's my first question.
You don't have to have a degree in politics or political science or criminal justice or anything to lobby or to advocate. One thing that we do here in America, which I cringe because, and I know people say it works, I don't think it does work. And I know this is being recorded, so it's probably going to be somewhere from years from now. But when people say, send these blast emails to your elected officials, that does not work. It just doesn't. Stop doing that, okay? Because it doesn't work. Constantly be there. When look for if there's a piece of legislation that you are interested in, find out when that's going to be in committee. Find out who the committee members are. Call their offices and ask for a meeting. You may not get it that week because the weeks are so fluid. Sometimes committees run over. Sometimes they just have to cancel their meetings. And there's nothing against you. It's just that they have to still be in committee, or that their schedules didn't work that week. So don't get discouraged when an elected official can't meet with you, because they probably have to cancel all their meetings that day. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. So just keep going, but show up, go to the committee hearings, listen to what's going on, and trust me, if you're in that committee room every time that it's going on, they're going to know. People are going to want to know who is that person, because the only people in those committee rooms are people who care or have a say. So I do know when I was here and how I actually got into lobbying is the internship program. I don't know if that's closed out now. Yeah, they still have that. And so I'm not sure when you apply for that, but I encourage you to apply for those internships and just learn about the process. Like I was saying at the beginning, we all could use a refresher in civics to just understand, how a bill becomes a law. The governor, the president, they don't pass any laws at all. That they're the executive branch. They can sign something into law. If they don't sign it into law, it'll sit on their desk and then it'll become law in 10 days anyway. So the legislators are, not that the governor or the executive branch is not important, but focus on your legislators. Find the ones from the committees that you care about and let them be your best friend. Talk to them, email them, show up at their offices, and just know that you may not be able to get in that one day, but keep going. I've had people, like I actually worked in the governor's office and had legislators miss a meeting with me, and that happens, and you gotta be okay with that, and just know that that's just how it works. But I encourage people to call, schedule a meeting, or show up, or even just watch it online. If you care about the funding that the legislature owes Tennessee State University, then watch the Higher Education Committee. Do that.
I was gonna say too, a lot of good ideas come from, there's a lot of different ways we can make laws. Sometimes the laws are things that council persons have to make pass or representatives, but then sometimes they actually come from people, everyday people like you. So I give the example, there's this guy named Justin Jones in the city of Nashville, and he came to me, and I think it's a good idea though, when you come to your legislator, that you have research and you have some ideas. So it's not just an idea, but you have information about it. So during my last year of council, he actually brought me a bill. He said, do you realize that the city is investing people's retirement in core civic? I said, no, I didn't realize we were doing that. Do you think that's a good idea? I said, no. And so he told me how much money we're investing in that. And so from that, I created a bill that said that we would no longer as a city invest in that. So not only did he bring me the bill, but he also worked with me on calling the other council members, organizing people. So that's an example. It does work. People do listen, but you have to have some ideas. You can't put all the pressure on the elected official because once again, there's so many pressures already. But if you have a really good idea, I've taken a lot of good ideas from constituents. There was also one about rabies. Somebody brought one about rabies. It was like, you really don't have to get your dog rabies every couple of years. All you just really need is one time. We brought the legislation. The legislation was approved by the Veterinarians Association. I brought it forth. And once again, he called some of the other elected officials with me because you serve with elected officials. Sometimes some might assume that they're just going to automatically agree with you, but that's not the case. You have to actually bring them up to speed on the bill as well. And you have to do that because each person represents their own district or they have their own issues that they're compassionate about. So you still have to talk to them. You have to have people, once again, to go to that lobbying, organize with you. So there's a lot of good ideas that I've gotten from people just like yourself. Justin's he was a young black graduate student. The guy that brought me the bill about the rabies was an older white gentleman. But the point is that ideas come from constituents. If you have a well thought out idea and it's well researched and you can have some people, we call it getting the t-shirt crew together. You show up at the meetings with your t-shirts on that says vote for this, it usually works. So I think that process definitely works. And so that's one way to get more involved as well.
I'm a firm believer in participatory democracy. And I think that that's the way our country should be run. I think that each and every single one of us in here should have a say and should be contacting our elected officials about various issues that we feel that are important to us. Whether you're contacting somebody on the local level, on the state level, or on the federal level. And so, the things that me and Erica have both said are true. We at Free Hearts, we do a lot of advocacy work. And as a public defender, I wasn't able to do as much advocacy work in the community as I would like to do around criminal justice reform, because we were, a lot of my advocacy was in the courtroom on behalf of my clients. But now I'm able to, advocate on a larger scale. And so we were essentially like the first and only nonprofit organization that has actually had a bill passed at the state legislature, our primary care bill, where it says that if someone is a primary caregiver of their child, then that can be considered when it comes to sentencing them for an offense. And so and then we worked with another organization just this past session to get some other bills passed at the legislature, saying, it was what we called our anti-shackling bill, saying that when you have pregnant women that are incarcerated, they will not be shackled in childbirth. We also did another bill about prenatal care for women that are incarcerated that are having kids, and to allow them to have the necessary prenatal care for them and for the unborn child. And so we worked on that, and a lot of that came from just the work that we do with women that are incarcerated, and then we also work with the National Council on the national level as well too. And so these bills were progressed in a lot of states, and even on the federal level as well, because it was a coalition of us all across the United States that was pushing the same thing, that all believed in the same issues and the same cause. And then we found other organizations here in Nashville that also believed in the same things that we did. And so we all got together and, and we presented the bill and followed it. And, like I said, it passed. We had our marijuana bill to legalize marijuana that did not pass. But we're not giving up on that one either, though. So. But, and so that's the thing. And so and the thing that I love the most about Free Hearts is that Free Hearts is, they build coalitions with other organizations within the community. Free Hearts is not an organization that wants to say, oh, well, I did it. It was me. No, it was us. It was a collaboration. The People's Budget, Free Hearts was behind that. And we all saw, how many people showed up at that council meeting talking about, reallocating funds from the police, and a lot of people wanted to reallocate them into education and into affordable housing and all of those things. And so that was a coalition of groups in Nashville that all, believed in the same issues, had the same, morals, values, belief systems, and things like that. And so, that's a way to get things done as well too. Organizing is key, when it comes to a lot of these things in order to get a lot of things done. And so, we do a lot of that, and I'm fortunate to be, in a position where I'm able to do that around issues that I feel that are important to myself as well as other members of the community.
Three questions that all have to be asked or answered at the same time. My first question is, what issue or issues do you believe that we as HBCU students, particularly at TSU, should get behind? The second question is there an organization or organizations that you believe that's beneficial for students to get engaged with?
I'll start. Particularly with TSU, TSU is a land grant institution. So that means that the federal government provides money for our university, and the state of Tennessee is supposed to match that. It's in law, it's legal, it's a bill that says the state has to match that, right? The state of Tennessee has not matched that at all. There's another land grant university in Tennessee, which is UT. They get their land grant match ×3, ×6 at times, while TSU for decades have not gotten that match. And what TSU has had to do, so in order to even keep the money at the federal level sent down to TSU had to go in their coffers, in their savings account, to match it themselves in order to keep that federal money. So if you have to go into your savings year after year, your savings are going to eventually be depleted. I'm not saying that, because a lot of people say, well, why did the electricity go out? Why did certain things, why are certain buildings, the water pressure is not as low as it should be? I'm not saying that everything is, that's just a magical reason why, but you have buildings with deferred maintenance for years upon years, right? We don't have the funding for it. And we're not saying that the state and the government is going to be our savior for that, but it's just what it is. We are a land grant university created by law. The government is supposed to supply and provide certain things for us. And so at Tennessee State University, what you can do is make sure that anytime that conversation is going on, that you're there, you're advocating that we are just as important as the other land-grant university, which is UT. When you think of Tennessee, you automatically think of University of Tennessee. TSU is also a land-grant university, and we need the funding just as our counterpart in East Tennessee. So there is, this past budget year, Representative Love was able to work out something where there's going to be a task force that looks at how much money is owed to TSU. I mean, it's in the millions of dollars what's owed to the university. And so that task force is going to look at that, and then hopefully next session and then the sessions after that, and they'll get the money that they owe to us. And so I encourage you to get involved with that, you know, getting our arrearage, making sure that we are getting what we are legally required to get when the federal government and the state of Tennessee created our university.
You answered it well. I think that was a.
I mean, it was for anybody that had an answer. The second question, kind of reflection of something you said earlier about not getting discouraged about when we don't see things happening in the evening. So what would you say, or all of your thoughts on students maintaining momentum in the fight towards seeing what we want to see accomplished? How do we maintain momentum?
Just doing it. You know, how many people are in Greek organizations? Anybody in Greek organizations in here? How many people got the grade that you wanted in your classes? Or how many people applied for a job and didn't get it? How many people applied for a scholarship and didn't get it? You're still here. You still came to school. You still show up. It's cold in here. I don't know, the people on the Zoom or the video, it is 20 degrees in this room, and there's people still in this room, their masks on, shivering because they care. Care, you know? The things that we mentioned before, those things matter. You know, how much money the university gives, whether marijuana is legal, whether you can buy wine in grocery stores, whether the speed limit is 75, like everything that impacts your life is tied to voting and a person who makes a decision that you voted for. So the real question is back to you, like, do you care? Do you care about life? Do you care about anything that happens to you? Because everything that happens to you is tied to that vote. So I'm gonna ask you, do you care? And if you do, then you vote. And you tell them that Leah Love said, vote. Right,
And I think you stay engaged too, though, because when something's not due to you and it's owed to you by law, you need to send groups of people up there every day. You have to be just relentless with it if it's that important to you. I mean, you think about that. She shared that is the law. So something that is the law, just like people took to the streets when Black people were getting killed by the police, like, you're breaking the law. People, you should be just as upset economically when things happen to you as they do when they happen to us socially. Because that is a real big disparity. So what's the problem? You need to talk to your legislators. You need to organize around that. I think some steps were shared with how to organize. She shared with you, you're not getting money and the other schools are getting it. Once again, you have to be persistent. You have to organize. I think I heard each one of us say that. You just keep organize, persistence, organize, persistence. Come up with some ways or solutions to help. And you just keep on pushing and pushing. I mean, that is horrifying to know that it is a law. It is not something that has to pass. It's already the law. You just have to get your money, right? You should be just up beyond upset. You should be blowing up the legislators' phones, right? You should be in their faces, in their offices. I mean, and you're respectful, but you know, they represent you. Some 95 representatives up there, and they need to represent you just like they represent everyone else. Why? Because they're your representative for the state of Tennessee.
And
I just want to say that, I think another way to really keep the momentum, particularly around issues that you care about, is to make sure that people are educated about your issue. Because, I can tell you everything, about the criminal justice system because that's an issue that I'm passionate about. And I've, worked around it my entire career, but there are so many other people who may care about criminal justice reform at a basic level, but may not even understand what goes on in that courtroom each and every single day. So it's important that, when it's an issue that we care about and when we have a particular type of knowledge, that we educate everyone else, in our communities about the issues and about, what is going on. Like, what Leah just said about, Tennessee State University and being owed all of that money. Like, I'm sure like not many people in this room knew that. And then when you start thinking about that and you start thinking about, okay, well, wait a minute, like, let's look at, like UT and like and all of the money that they're getting and what they're able to do. And then we all know the deficiencies that are going on here at Tennessee State University. When you start putting that information out and you start educating the public about that, then people are like, wait a minute, that's not right. Like, what do we need to do about this? And so that's, to me, I have found that that's one of the biggest ways is to get people involved and then to keep people involved because, just like with our campaign that we're doing around, fees and fines for people that have been formerly incarcerated. A lot of people didn't know what the process was in order to get your voting rights reinstated. A lot of people didn't know the number of people that Tennessee disenfranchises. A lot of people didn't know that we're actually, third behind Texas and Florida with the number of people that we're disenfranchising. A lot of people didn't know that. And so when we start putting that information out there, people were like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, because Florida has been all in the news and we know that Florida is disenfranchising, millions of people. And when you say that we're second behind Texas and Florida, it's like, well, wait a minute, that's problematic. But see, but nobody knew that because the information wasn't out there. And so, we've been able to, to really, start to create a movement around, voter restoration for people that have been formerly incarcerated. And so I would say education is really key, for sustaining your movement.
A follow-up to that was, are there any organizations that you feel that we should get involved with, whether that be on campus or in the city or at a national level?
There are so many different organizations here in Nashville that are doing great work. Of course, Free Hearts is doing great work. There are some other organizations, Rotten to the Core is doing great work around getting rid of Core Civic. Equity Alliance is doing some good work. There's so many. Workers' Dignity is doing good work. Gideon's Army is doing good work. Mothers Over Murder are doing good work. There's so many organizations here in Nashville that are really doing good work. And, it goes back to, your first question about what issues should Tennessee State students be getting behind. And I would say whatever issue you're passionate about. And if there is not an organization in Nashville or even when you leave here, wherever you end up at, if there's not an organization, then, create it, start it, because that's going to be the way that you're going to make sure that your voice is being heard. And then you may find that there are other people that are, out in the community that wanted to be involved, but were not able to. But then, there are some people that may not want to be physically involved, but still want to feel as if they're a part of a cause. And so you can always donate to organizations too, to their causes, because most of these organizations are nonprofits, and they're not getting a lot of money, but it's a lot of the nonprofit organizations that are on the ground each and every single day that are in the trenches doing the work, and require a lot of money. And I'm going to give a shout out to the community bail fund, the National Bail Fund as well too, because they're doing awesome work as well too. And so, there are so many different organizations that are doing the work. And so I would just say, just plug into those. A lot of times there's no point in reinventing the wheel because there are people that have been doing this for a really, really long time and know the landscape and know how to get it done. But whatever you're passionate about, I say just that's your issue and that's what you do. I found, me running for Congress, I didn't realize that I was passionate about healthcare, but I am, I'm really passionate about it. And, and just thinking about a lot of the disparities when it comes to healthcare, like it pisses me off. And, and I'm just like, wait a minute, and so then I'm thinking like, wait a minute, like we didn't expand Medicaid. That's a problem here. And, and so many other different issues when it comes to healthcare and everything else. But, I'm passionate about healthcare too. A lot of people don't know that because I don't talk about it as much as criminal justice reform. But, those are the things. Just find the issues and you be passionate about a lot of issues. Just don't burn yourself out in the process, though.
I got my money on Charlie Green. I know he's gonna get it done. I know he's gonna get it done. I got my money on Charlie Green. He's a wonderful student leader here at TSU.
My name is Kirsten Rowe. I'm a sophomore here at TSU and I'm a biology major. My question revolves around the fact that most of the people in my immediate space right now are first-time voters. And today I had an interaction with a peer and I told him I'd be watching the debate that's going on Wednesday. I watched the previous one and he asked me the question, why are you watching the debate if you already know who you're voting for? So what would be your approach to someone who thinks that voting is just like you pick one of the lesser evils, or you pick one that associates with your party that you're supposed to be voting for? What would you say, something like that?
You know how I feel, but what if your person doesn't win? And so you need to know what the other side, whatever that means, thinks, or what that other person thinks. I didn't finish my thought earlier when I was asking like how many people are a part of Greek organizations, and the reason I asked that is because we are so polarized. We're like, this is Democrat, and Democrats, all Democrats think this way, or this is Republican, all Republicans think this way. A lot of people vote Democrat sometimes, Republican sometimes, and that's okay too. You can't be so tied to a party that you'll still vote for Trump just because you're a Republican, right? And back to the Greek thing. So if you're a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated or a member of Delta Sigma Beta Sorority Incorporated, what some people say, what's the difference? We all want to do community service. We all want to do this. So Democrats and Republicans should have the same end goal, right? Making America a better place for everybody to live. But you may just go about it different ways, and you can't let everyone has that line sister, right? Or that line brother who does the most, who's at the parties, always drunk, or always, this is just real, right? We're in college, always drunk, always doing something, always getting in trouble, and you don't want your chapter to be known for that one person, right? You don't want your chapter to be known for this. You don't want people in your chapter to be known for this, right? So you can't let, just like parties, they can't let that one person determine what that party is about. And I think that's what we've done here. We've allowed Biden to determine everything that a Democrat is supposed to be, or we've allowed Trump to determine everything a Republican is supposed to be. So now it's like, you're a Republican, oh, I don't like you because you don't like black people. I know plenty of Republicans who like white people. I've been treated better by some Republicans than some Democrats. There's some Democrats who don't like black people, right? And so we've gotten so polarized that you just say one word, we've allowed that one person to determine what it is about Democrats that you don't like, or what it is about Republicans that you don't like. So it's so important to look at the debates because they're people first, or they should be people first, and they may win, and you need to know what you're going to get into. And so honestly, it's just about being informed. And like Peter was saying, like, be educated. You may learn something that you didn't know. She learned so much more about healthcare running for Congress. You may learn something so much more about immigration while watching the debate. And so just if you want to be educated, if you want a better life for yourself and people around you, then you need to watch it. I know that was all over the place, but I just get so passionate about voting. And when people say I don't want to vote, I'm like, who are you? Come on.
Hi, my name is Arlington, and my question for you was, when it comes to voting locally, a lot of times, when we get into the ballot, when we get into like that space where we vote, a lot of times I don't know half of the people that's in the list, and like especially when it comes to the judges,
And filling out the absentee ballot, it allowed me to do research as I was voting. So how would you go about knowing who is running for what before you get there?
Google is your friend. I mean, when I was growing up, Google was my Google, but now I Google everything. My mother will call me today and I'm like, did you look at Google first? Like, you can Google me, like everything about a person is gonna be on Google. And if you want to be, I know some people who just go in there and vote just because they know they should vote. But there are some people who go in there with a list and they know it's on you. Like, do you want to know who you're voting for? Like, you get the names before. They should email you. It should come in the mail, and you'll get the list of everyone who's running. Google them, look them up, and that's something that's on you to be an educated voter, because just like her friend, someone may ask you, why are you voting? Who are you voting for? Why did you vote for that person? You can say, I voted for this person because I like their stance on immigration. It's not gonna take that much out of your life to just Google something really quickly, right? But I say research it on your own. That's how you go about doing it. And if they didn't send a mailer to your mailbox, then I don't know. But that's how you find out too. Sometimes mailers, sometimes going to forums, going to debates. There's so many ways to find out who's running. Judges, they don't have debates, though, right?
I think so.
They do.
They have forums. Yeah,
Okay,
I
I
think
know.
that's absolutely right, because Judge Smith and,
Oh, you know what they do? They
Yeah,
just
and
can't
Judge-
endorse people. That's
yeah,
what it is.
that's right, and Judge Tillman had forums. So I think forums and debates, like that young lady was just saying, I think that's the way that you do it. And also, different groups do endorsements. So if you look at those groups, you look at the person, you see who's endorsing them. For instance, is it the firefighters, or if it's the fraternal organization of police, and you're interested in criminal justice, I don't know that you want the Fraternal Order of Police to endorse your candidate versus a Black Lives Matter. So different organizations can inform you about your candidate as well. And I think that the debates, the Google, all of those different things make a difference. You just have to take the time out to do that, to research it. You gotta research it to make sure that the person that you're voting for will make sure that you continue to exist. And when I say that, I really mean that, because sometimes we vote people and we may not know what their issues are about women, or about abortion, or about minority participation. So you really want to make sure that you have researched those people before you vote them in, because some people don't believe in money allocated for Black businesses. They don't believe that Black students should have the opportunity to go to PWI, so you just really want to make sure that you are looking at that. They don't believe in gay rights. So whatever it is, you really need to research it to make sure that you're not voting for someone who is totally against and totally trying to annihilate me. So I think it's very important to attend those debates, research, and look at those organizations that are big organizations, like we talked about, like Black Lives Matter. They do endorsements as well.
Thank you.
And I would say most of the time, people that are running for office, they usually have a campaign website. And so you can go to the campaign website and you can find out information about who they are personally, and then some of their top issues. And there's usually always a way that you can connect with them and to contact them. And if you don't see your particular issue that you're passionate about, or if it is something that you want to know more about and you don't see that on their website, you can always send them an email and just like, hey, like I went to your website, I like what I saw about, X, Y, and Z, but I didn't see this. Could you please, tell me what your, stance is regarding that? We would get a lot of emails like that, because you can't put every single issue, on there, but we would get emails where people would ask us about various different things and we would respond. And people really appreciate it, because people are just so used to people running for office not responding to them and not responding to their emails. And particularly in the time of COVID, when you're not able to really get out and, and meet people and go to debates and those types of things. And so I would just always say, like, once you do your research, if you don't find what you're looking for, then just shoot the campaign an email and ask them where they stand on that particular issue. And if you don't get an answer, then I think that is your answer.
Thank you. Just wanted to say, we have time for one more question, so Karen, can you repeat the last question?
Hey ladies, I am Karen Powell, and I just wanted to know, I want everybody to answer this question. So when talking to older generations, I find 9 times out of 10, we don't necessarily have the same views on politics or the issues affecting our Black communities. So how can I keep advocating for what we believe in, because they say like our generation is like fighting more towards change and new social trends and just a liberal set of views. So how can I keep fighting for that with talking to my elders around me?
One thing with,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
one thing, that minorities, particularly Black people, we don't have the privilege of having different thoughts. Because they think Black people should all think the same way, right? Black people should be put in a box. There's Black people who don't think the same. There's Black people who love abortion. There's Black, well, not love abortion, but there's Black people who are okay with abortion and Black people who are not. There's Black people who are okay with same-sex marriage and who are not. Black people think differently. We are different, but because of the history of our country, we haven't had the privilege of having separate thoughts, right? And so I don't think it's necessarily a generational thing. I think it's just because there might be, I don't know if I'm a generation, I don't know if I'm an elder to you, but you know, we may think the same on so many things. I mean, there are the dads, okay, but I just think that we sometimes it is a generational thing because things are different than they were when I was your age. But oftentimes it's people think differently, and that's okay. And I don't think that we've ever had that privilege. And so we're fighting too many battles as Black people or minorities in this country. And it's so unfortunate because we don't have that privilege of thinking differently. And you don't necessarily have to bridge the gap. Just be there to listen to the other person. You know, your parents or whoever your caregivers are, you probably think differently, but you still have the same idea of making sure that you come home safely, right? So, I mean, everyone still has that same idea of making America this wonderful place for everybody to live and be okay. And so figuring out how you do that at your age, and how I do that at my age, or how someone else does it at their age, and just being okay with having different thoughts and not being shocked or surprised just because someone's Black or brown and they don't think like you, because that's okay too, but we just don't have that privilege here in America.
I would say too, and I think that was a great answer. I think it's okay for you to be strong in what you believe too, but at the same time, I think sometimes we can be strong. When I say we, if we're asserting our ideas, but we don't give other people that same space. And I think we can do that without getting mad. And sometimes when people have conversations and the ideas are so different, they can't have a dialogue that is a safe space. So I think it's understanding that. And sometimes with your elders, depending on what particular generation they fall in, you just might have to be like, okay, grandma. You know, you just have to chalk it up and just be like, you know what, that's my grandma. I'm gonna do it a little bit differently. And I think especially in college, it's really a time to discover yourself and come up with new ideas. And I remember one time I went back home and I told my grandmother, I thought it was really simple. I didn't think it was a big deal. I was like, Grandma, I'm not eating meat anymore or pork. She said, what? After all these years, all our family been eating this? I mean, so some of it's traditional and you sometimes offend them. And you have to understand though what they came up through and what they experienced may be different from your experience, but at the same time, if it wasn't from them, you wouldn't be here. So you kind of navigate or come around the things that are the issues that you can agree on, and the ones you can't, just be like, oh, well, I love you, Grandma, give her a kiss on the forehead and walk on out. All right, and that's okay too. But I think young people definitely have a space, and I definitely think that America changed. It changed this during this COVID 2020, and it went like 30 years ahead. So some even argue that it may be okay that Trump was in office, because if not, things might not have changed because we might not have experienced the type of oppression, right? And y'all do it a little bit differently, and that's okay too. Now, I wouldn't do it like that, but you're getting things done. So I think it's understanding that and giving people that space. Is it effective? Yeah. Are there some things we can gather around and agree upon? Yeah. And those things we can't, it's okay. It's okay, because at the end of the day, I think like she said, we're not a monolithic race, but we've experienced so much oppression. Sometimes we don't have the same latitude that other races to kind of fragment. So the bigger issues that we can get around, we should. And the ones that we disagree on, that's okay too. Yeah. So,
I mean, and so I think, you know, just with what they both said is that you have to give people space for their truth. Because just because it's not your lived experience doesn't mean that doesn't bear any truth. And so a lot of times our elders have a different lived experience than we do. And we all know that our lived experiences a lot of times shapes the way that we think and the way that we do things. And so, we have to give space for that. And, particularly when it comes to, our elders and people that we care about, it's just like, okay, well, what's the end goal? And it's just like, we may not agree, with the measures of how we get to the end goal. And that's okay, because we can think differently and we can be differently. But as long as we have the same end goal in mind and we're both working towards that, then I think there's space for all of that, and that's just the thing is that, there are, like younger people that are, out and right now, that are protesting and doing this. And then, you may have some elders that are, sitting around and talking to some other elders about voting and, and all of this other kind of stuff. It's all effective and it's effective in its own right. And so, I don't think that there's in any one way is right or any one way is wrong. And that I don't think we need to move other people along with what it is that we're trying to do. But I, like I said, I just think that we have to give space for, for all of those things. And like I said, just recognizing it's a common goal and, and that we're probably going to disagree, but that's okay too, as long as, each and every single one of us are working in our respective areas to get to that common goal, then that's fine.
Okay, ladies, thank you so much for everything tonight. I know I said that was the last question. I totally understood. We had a really good audience question from online, and I think it's a great way to end this discussion tonight. So the question is, where do you see Black women in politics in the next 5 to 10 years? Just like a quick little brief, where you see them and where you hope to see them.
I think it's definitely, especially with Senator Harris and receiving the vice presidential nomination. I think this is a really good time for Black women in politics. I think a lot of times, though, for Black women, what holds us back, but not really hold us back. That's what I think I found so impressive about Marquita Bradshaw, but money. I think a lot of times people that are not in politics don't realize how important money is. And it's important because that's how you get your message out. If you don't have any money, you can't get any signs out. You can't hire any field workers to help you get out there to get your message out. You can't do the campaign ads. And so that money piece is very important. So if you see a candidate and you just give them $5 or $10, or you can volunteer some of your time. It's a lot different. Or you can tell other people to vote for you. So it's 2 or 3 ways. But I definitely think that this is the time for African American or Black females to be in office. And so good candidates are wanted, good candidates are needed. I think we just have to see ourselves there. And I was really shocked, and I appreciate Keita for running for Congress. I was really shocked when the young lady shared with me that she was the only African American. I think we should have that space. And sometimes we're so self-conscious that we don't see ourselves in those positions. And that's why I open up with, you gotta have courage. You can't be weak-minded, you just gotta jump on in there. If you can see yourself, or you have a little bitty voice that speaks to you that says you can do that, that's a gift. I always share that with everyone because I wasn't told about criminal justice. That's not my gift, but I was moved to be more involved in politics and think I could make a difference. I think whatever you feel, when you hear those little voices whispering to you, don't close those out, because we all don't have the same gift. Leah does lobbying. That's a gift. I never felt that gift, but each one of us has our own gift. And when you follow that, you will be very, very successful in that. So if you hear something, you get that urge, you say, I don't think that's quite right. And whatever that is, you don't think is quite, I don't like the way they discriminate against females. Or I don't like how those men talk to me. Or I don't like it, when I look at the board, there's not any people on that board that look like me. Or I don't like the fact that there's a big wage disparity between Africans. If you hear that, that's speaking to you and you need to follow on that. So I think the future for Black women in elected roles is really great. I think we just have to buckle down and see ourselves there. We gotta see ourselves there. It can't be what you don't see, so you have to see yourself be.
I think Black women everywhere. I think that because you say, see yourself there. When you think of the mayor, you think of an old white man. When you think of the president, you think of an old white man. We have to stop looking at certain roles as certain races and certain genders. And so with Kamala Harris being a VP, Keita, while she didn't win, she would have been the first, Black woman, Congresswoman from Tennessee. I'm tired of being first. I'm 37 years old and I thought I would never be a first, but I was the first person to graduate from my MBA program, the first Black person to graduate from my MBA program in 2007. I shouldn't be a first in 07, right? And so I think we need to stop being the first at everything. Like, it's time now for that. And so I see Black women everywhere. I see it normalized that a Black woman's running for mayor and no one's like, why is she running? It's like, oh yeah, she could win. She could be the mayor. I see it normalized that a Black woman could be running for president or could be president or could be the CEO or could be president of TSU or could be whatever. Like, let's normalize. It shouldn't be, can you see a Black woman there? It's just like, oh, she's a woman, she happens to be Black, and she's amazing. I want to be there. So in 5 or 10 years, I can't remember what the time span was, but I just want us to normalize being in spaces.
Representation absolutely, it matters. And I think it was this year was the most, they had the most Black women and women of color running for Congress than they had ever had, all across the United States. And, so I think that was huge, and I think that's monumental. And then Black women actually winning. And so I think we're in a phase where we are moving from the thought of Black women leading to the reality of Black women leading. And that's the difference, because we can talk about Black women leading all the time, but it's just the thought. And so we've got to get past that thought of Black women leading to the reality, like trusting that Black women can lead, and that Black women can lead being Black women, unapologetically Black women. That we don't have to conform to a certain stereotype in order to lead. That we can be who we are and be unapologetically who we are, and that we still have the qualities, and the experience that is necessary in order to lead. And so, I think that we are moving into that, and and I really do appreciate that that's where we are, and and I think that that's where we need to continue to push. That is what we need to do. And one of the things that I always say, I absolutely love Representative Presley, because to me, she is the example of a young Black woman that is representing her district, and she is unapologetically Black. And it is so refreshing to see her and to hear her, talk about things. And she comes, everything that she talks about, she's coming from a lens of being Black first and then being a woman. And it's so great to see these issues that we have all been championing, to actually have somebody that is doing, like I said, and that they're unapologetically who they are. And so, like I said, I think we're definitely in a good space, but we definitely got to keep pushing. And I think that coming to that realization of Black women actually leading, then it deals with the piece that Erica talked about with the money to run campaigns, because my goodness, it definitely takes money to run campaigns. Let me tell you. And I think that when we get to that, then we will start to put our money behind Black women, because we feel as if they can lead. And like I said, we're seeing it all across this country right now. And so I think that we are definitely in a good place. And and like Leah said, I see Black women everywhere. Because I believe that we should be everywhere. Because like I said, I do believe that our voices have been, silenced for so long in so many places. And I think that it is time for us to stand up and to take a stand and make sure that our voices are heard, and that we are taking care of ourselves, and that we really experience the healing, justice, and liberation that we're all calling for our communities.
Well, thank you guys. I just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I want to thank everybody for sitting in this cold room. Hopefully Starbucks is still open so we can all get some coffee afterwards. I want to thank all of our guests, Ms. Gilmore, Ms. Love, Ms. Haynes. Thank you guys. Can we get a big round of applause for them? Also, also want to thank my sister queens, Miss Allure, as well as Miss Lalas, for representing us tonight in a unity event. So we get a round of applause for that. And I just want to close out by just doing like a charge. Like everything we heard tonight, guys, it was just good. Like I don't know, I really just taking everything I am. So like anything you heard today, don't let it just go to the wayside. Like really take it to charge, really take it to your home, your friends, to your heart. And yeah, thank you guys so much for coming. We have chips outside and waters. Please take as much as you want. And thank you guys so much.
Should I stop the recording? Should I stop the recording? Is it still recording? You can stop it. It's still live. It's still live. I'm, yeah.